Have you ever felt alienated in your own home, as if you were just a visitor who stayed too long? That's how it began for me. Slowly, subtly, a feeling I couldn't quite identify at first. And then, before I knew it, my name is Marcus. I've always been the kind of man who values accountability. If you take on a task, you finish it. No whining, no excuses. And you definitely don't run when things get tough. That's why, when I met Naomi, a single mother with twins, I didn't think twice about stepping in. I saw a widow who had been dealt a cruel hand and two children who had lost their father. But I believed I could change things. I believed I could be the man who made their lives better. I didn't enter their lives seeking appreciation or recognition. I just wanted to build a real family. And for a while, I thought I had. I worked hard to give Naomi and the twins, Jordan and Ava, a roof over their heads, food on the table, and a future they could rely on. But more than that, I was there. Every school event, every scraped knee, every late-night fever. They didn't just call me when they needed someone to sit by their bedside. They called me Dad, and I let myself believe it. I told myself that love could be built over time, that I was their father in every way that mattered. But love, as I later learned, was conditional, and I missed the signs, the small shifts, the quiet changes that should have warned me my time was running out. First, I thought it was normal. Teenagers push boundaries. A little attitude, a little apathy, I brushed it off. But when Jordan turned 17, everything I had built began to crumble. He started ignoring curfews, coming home late, barely speaking to me. When I'd ask where he'd been, he'd shrug and mutter, "Whatever," before disappearing into his room. And Ava wasn't far behind. She'd roll her eyes, ignore me, and mimic her mother's quiet defiance. It wasn't just rebellion. It was resentment. And Naomi? The woman I had vowed to stand by? At first, I thought she was just trying to avoid conflict. I'd look at her, waiting for her to step in, to say something. But she never did. She would just sigh, glance at her phone, or shake her head as if I was overreacting. Then, one night, everything changed. It was past midnight when Jordan finally came home. No call, no text. He walked in like he owned the place. I wasn't angry that he was late. I was angry at the sheer disregard, the lack of respect. I asked him where he had been. He rolled his eyes. I reminded him of the one rule that had never changed. "If you live under my roof, you follow my rules," he scoffed. "Relax. I'm not a kid." And then he said it. "You're not my real dad, so quit acting like it." For a moment, my whole body went cold. And then Ava, my sweet little Ava, the girl who used to crawl into my lap, nodded and muttered, "Yeah, you're just some guy. Our mom married." I turned to Naomi, waiting for her to say something, anything, to remind them who I was, what I had done for them. She didn't. She just stood there, not angry, not sad, just indifferent. And that's when something inside me broke. Have you ever had a moment where everything you believed, everything you built, was suddenly a lie? That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the dark, thinking, remembering every birthday, every sacrifice, every late-night drive, every moment I had spent trying to build this family, and I realized the truth. I wasn't their father. I was just a provider, a placeholder, a convenience. And the worst part? They had never seen me as anything else, but if I had been blind before, I wasn't anymore. A few days later, it happened again. Only this time, Naomi joined in. Ava had left a mess in the kitchen, crumbs on the counter, dishes piled up, juice spilled on the floor. I asked her to clean up after herself. A simple request. She looked at me and shrugged. "Why don't you do it? It's your house, isn't it?" Before I could even respond, Jordan jumped in. "Why are you always trying to boss us around? You're not even our real dad." And then, Naomi, without looking up from her phone, said softly, so casually, "Marcus, maybe you should stop trying so hard." That was it. That was all she said, and in that exact moment, I felt clarity. Not just anger, not just pain. Clarity. Had given them everything, and received nothing in return. But if I was nothing to them, then maybe it was time I started acting like it. I looked at her intently. But I felt nothing because I'm not his own family, and his feelings are hurt. I didn't mean to punish anyone. I just stopped doing things that you all stated I didn't need to do in the first place. She sneered. You're the father, so that's your duty. Oh, there it was. Truth, love, respect, and duty. So why didn't you stand up for me? All I needed to know about Naomi's demise was that she opened her lips, closed them, and turned away. I nodded. As their talk deteriorated, Jordan and Ava continued to seem indifferent, but I could see the fractures. Naomi was struggling, the kids were unhappy, the house was in disarray, the money was tight, and even though I was free, I didn't feel guilty anymore. I had come to terms with the fact that I had been struggling to justify my value to those who never saw it in the first place. It took a month before I found serenity, once I stopped trying to prove myself to the wrong people. I ignored it until Jordan's first message said, "Hey, can we talk? I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but things aren't ideal right now." So I wrote a message a week later and ignored it until Naomi eventually gave in. I believe we should speak, but by that time it was too late. I had already decided that I would not return. People only value you when you are gone. When I quit being their father, they smiled, and everything they took for granted vanished. But now, they mourn me. I had finally learned the lesson I should have known from the beginning, and it was their burden to bear, not mine. Never ask for respect from others. Let them take you for granted and leave when you feel like you're being taken advantage of. Because by the time someone realizes how valuable you are, it's too late. You'd think that when a man pulls away, when he quits making sacrifices, people would pause and think. Perhaps they would realize where they went wrong. They might try to fix it, but not my family. Instead, they chose to charge me initially. Little. Things went missing. Papers from my office disappeared, and my work files were abruptly removed from their location. At first, I thought it was negligence. Perhaps Naomi had moved them. Or maybe Jordan and Ava were simply being their typically careless selves. But then I spotted my car. A long time ago, I initially believed that the scratch across the driver's side door was an accident, possibly caused by a negligent driver in the parking lot. But as soon as it occurred again, I noticed new scrapes, more purposeful this time. I refused to accept it, but my instincts informed me it was them. I said nothing, letting it go. Perhaps they believed that I would lash out, explode, or plead with them to stop because they were bothering me. But I wasn't going to satisfy them. One evening, though, I couldn't help but notice my closet when I got home. It had been raided. My clothing, shirts, suits, and jackets had been ripped into ribbons and slashed, flung like trash over the floor. My shoes were gone, my possessions were missing. I had security cameras. When I looked at the footage, everything I had worked for years had been purposefully destroyed. The video validated my concerns about Jordan and Ava, my alleged children. They laughed while tearing through my belongings, as if I were a complete stranger, as if I had never once given them food, clothing, or support. Naomi didn't appear in the video, but she didn't have to. She stood between them and accountability. When I showed her the footage, she folded her arms without apologizing or disputing it. "They're upset inside," she remarked, as if it were an explanation. I repeated it. Marcus used the word abandoned to describe how they felt since I stopped allowing them to utilize me, as if I had left them, as if I owed them, as if I hadn't broken my back for years to be there for them. I inhaled deeply and experienced nothing but sadness and rage. "That's okay. Clarity." "Recognize something, Naomi," I said. She arched an eyebrow, anticipating my words. "This is your final chance," I told her. "You'll regret it if you allow them to continue abusing me in this manner." "Marcus, stop being dramatic." She rolled her eyes. I nodded. And I had my response. I didn't alter my conduct, I didn't pick fights or take offense, but I did keep track of everything that was stolen. I documented every act of destruction, every sneer, every insult directed at me. I captured screenshots and videos. I constructed my case in a manly manner, getting ready for a conflict I knew was imminent. This was about more than just my pride. It was about defending myself. Then, as if the universe was trying to give me the last boost I needed, one night I woke up to the sound of muted laughter. I got out of bed at around 2 in the morning and approached the commotion. I discovered Jordan and Ava sneaking out of the house with backpacks slung over their shoulders. I didn't stop them. I just silently followed them. They arrived at a residence. I recorded everything, taking photos and videos from the opposite side of town. The people they were meeting weren't just pals. They were the kind of people who could get you into serious trouble. Parents worry that their children would move in with someone else, and yet Naomi had the audacity to tell me that they felt abandoned. I returned home and waited. Jordan and Ava returned covertly, believing they had gotten away with it. I remained silent until just before dawn. Then I sent Naomi the evidence. She reacted instantly to every image, video, and damning piece of evidence. The indisputable truth was in front of her as she shouted and stared at her phone. I shrugged. Children are your responsibility. You were aware of this and chose not to stop them. She glanced at me, and for the first time in a long time, she appeared. Afraid rather than just concerned. "Now you expect me to intervene?" She became terrified, realizing that she had lost control, and, more significantly, that she had misplaced my belongings. After that, Naomi stopped acting so smug, not because I started acting differently, but because they did. When I passed Jordan and Ava, despite their confidence, she seemed apprehensive, and began to keep her distance, because they were aware that I had the advantage. I had the evidence I needed to go and never return, and I was going to use it.